isn't who she claims to be? What if she's actually someone from your past? Someone who spent years planning the most elaborate revenge plot you've ever heard of? And what if your loving husband isn't just a cheating scumbag, but potentially a murderer who's been living a double life for years? Victoria Sterling thought she had the perfect marriage, the perfect home, the perfect life. She had no idea she was living in a house of cards built on lies, deception, and stolen money. When everything comes crashing down in one devastating afternoon, she discovers that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones with the sharpest knives. This isn't just a story about infidelity, it's a psychological thriller that will make you question everyone you trust. Stick around because the twists in this tale will leave you absolutely speechless. The divorce papers landed on the hospital bed right next to the ultrasound photo. Victoria Sterling stared at the legal documents, her 8 months pregnant, belly rising and falling with shallow breaths. The black and white image of her unborn daughter seemed to mock her from the crisp white sheets. How could this be happening? "You cannot be serious right now," Dr. Helen Crawford said, stepping between Victoria and her husband Richard. "This woman is in her 3rd trimester. Her blood pressure is already elevated." Richard Sterling adjusted his expensive Italian suit and glanced at his Rolex. At 45, he still commanded attention in any room with his silver temples and piercing blue eyes. Today, those eyes held nothing but cold determination. "I am completely serious, Helen," Richard replied. "Victoria needs to sign these papers today. I have a life to live." Victoria's hands trembled as she picked up the divorce settlement. The numbers swam before her eyes. After 6 years of marriage, he was offering her practically nothing. Their Malibu mansion, worth $12 million, would go to him. Their investment properties, their art collection, even her Mercedes sedan. All gone. "Richard, please," Victoria whispered. "The baby is due in 4 weeks. Can we at least wait until after she is born?" "No," his voice cut through her like ice. "I am in love with someone else, Victoria. Someone who actually appreciates me. Someone who does not spend her days redecorating our house like it is some kind of museum." Dr. Crawford checked Victoria's blood pressure monitor and frowned. 160/95. "Richard, I need you to leave. This stress is dangerous for both mother and baby." "I am not leaving until she signs." Richard pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. "Scarlett is waiting for me. We have dinner reservations at Nobu." Victoria felt her world crumbling around her. Scarlett, the stunning brunette model who had moved into their guest house 6 months ago. Richard claimed she needed temporary housing between modeling contracts. Victoria had welcomed her like family, even helping her decorate the small space. "You are choosing her over your own daughter?" Victoria asked. Richard shrugged. "That baby could be anyone's for all I know." The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. She had never been unfaithful, never even considered it. Richard knew this. He was just being cruel now. "Get out," Dr. Crawford said firmly. "Security will escort you if necessary." "Sabadine," Richard tossed a gold pen onto the bed. "Sign the papers, Victoria. Do not make this harder than it needs to be. I have already moved Scarlett into the main house. Your things are packed." After he left, Victoria broke down completely. 6 years of marriage gone. Her beautiful home gone. Her financial security vanishing before her eyes. And all for a woman Victoria had tried to help. "I need to call Grace," Victoria said through her tears. Dr. Crawford handed her the phone. "Your blood pressure is concerning me. I want you to go straight to Grace's house and rest. No stress, no confrontations. Promise me." Victoria nodded, though she knew avoiding stress would be impossible now. She dialed her best friend's number with shaking fingers. "Grace, I need you," she sobbed into the phone. "Richard wants a divorce. He chose that model next door over his own family. I do not know what to do." "I am on my way," Grace Thompson replied immediately. "Do not sign anything. Do not agree to anything. I will be there in 20 minutes. Victoria hung up and stared at the ultrasound photo again. Her daughter's perfect profile, her tiny hands, her peaceful expression. How could Richard walk away from this miracle? "Mrs. Sterling," Dr. Crawford said gently, "I have been your doctor for 3 pregnancies now, 2 miscarriages and now this healthy baby girl. You are stronger than you know. You will get through this." Victoria touched her belly protectively. She had lost 2 babies before this pregnancy. Richard knew how precious this child was to her. How could he abandon them both now? When Grace arrived, she found Victoria still staring at the divorce papers. "Do not even think about signing those," Grace said, grabbing the documents. "This settlement is insulting. After 6 years of marriage to a millionaire real estate developer, you should get at least half of everything." "He says I can keep my jewelry and clothes," Victoria said bitterly. "How generous." Grace read through the papers carefully. At 39, she was a successful family attorney herself, though she specialized in adoptions rather than divorces. Her sharp mind quickly identified the problems. "This is garbage, Victoria. He is trying to claim all the properties were his before the marriage, but I know that is not true. You inherited money from your grandfather and contributed to several purchases. We can fight this." "I am too tired to fight," Victoria said. "I just want to protect my baby." "Then we fight for her," Grace replied firmly. "Your daughter deserves better than this. You both do." As they prepared to leave the medical building, Victoria caught sight of herself in the lobby mirror. Her usually perfect blonde hair hung limp around her shoulders. Her designer maternity dress could not hide how exhausted she looked. At 32, she had always been told she was beautiful, but today she felt ancient. "Grace, what if he is right?" Victoria asked as they walked to the parking garage. "What if I was not a good wife? I spent so much time on the house, on making everything perfect for him." "Stop that right now," Grace said. "You were a wonderful wife. You supported his business. You entertained his clients. You made that house a showplace he was proud of. Richard is having some kind of midlife crisis, and that model took advantage of it." Victoria thought about Scarlett Daniels. 28 years old, 5 feet 9 inches tall, with dark hair and green eyes. She spoke with a slight southern accent and claimed to be from Georgia originally. Victoria had found her charming and down-to-earth, not like the usual shallow models Richard's business associates brought around. "She seemed so nice," Victoria said. "We talked about books, about travel. She even asked about my family history, said she loved hearing family stories." "That should have been your first red flag," Grace replied. "Models do not usually care about other women's family trees." They reached Grace's car, and Victoria carefully lowered herself into the passenger seat. Her back ached constantly now, and the baby seemed to press against her ribs with every breath. "I need to go back to the house and get some things," Victoria said. "My photo albums, my grandmother's china." "Absolutely not," Grace said. "You are not going back there while she is living in your house. I will send someone to collect your personal items tomorrow." As they drove through Malibu toward Grace's house, Victoria stared out at the Pacific Ocean. She had loved this view for 6 years. Now she might never see it from her own home again. "Grace, there was something strange about Scarlett today," Victoria said suddenly. "When Richard was yelling at me, I saw her watching from the hallway. She looked almost sad, like she felt sorry for me. But then she smiled this weird little smile, like she was enjoying it." "Narcissistic abuse does that to people," Grace said. "Some women get addicted to the drama of stealing other women's husbands. It makes them feel powerful." Victoria filed that phrase away. Narcissistic abuse. She would need to learn about that if she was going to survive this divorce. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Richard. "Papers signed yet? Scarlett made your favorite lasagna for dinner. Ironic, right?" Victoria showed the message to Grace, who swore under her breath. "Block his number," Grace said. "All communication goes through lawyers now. This man is trying to destroy you emotionally, and I will not let that happen." As they pulled into Grace's driveway, Victoria felt the baby kick hard against her ribs. At least someone was fighting back. "What am I going to do?" Victoria asked. "I have no job, no money of my own, nowhere to live. How do I raise a baby alone?" "You are not alone," Grace said firmly. "You have me, you have Dr. Crawford, you have other friends, and you are going to discover you are much stronger than Richard ever let you believe." Victoria hoped Grace was right, because tomorrow she was going to have to face the hardest truth of all. The man she loved, the father of her child, was gone forever, and the woman who took him might not be who she claimed to be. Victoria spent the night tossing and turning in Grace's guest bedroom, her mind racing despite her exhausted body. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Richard's cold expression when he demanded she sign the divorce papers. How had their marriage come to this? At 7 in the morning, she decided she needed answers. Against Grace's advice, Victoria drove back to the Malibu mansion she had called home for 6 years. She needed to see Scarlett face to face, to understand how this had happened. The electronic gates recognized her car and opened automatically. Richard had not changed the codes yet. Victoria parked in the circular driveway, noting that Scarlett's red Ferrari was parked where Victoria's Mercedes usually sat. The house looked the same from the outside. Mediterranean-style architecture, perfectly manicured gardens, the infinity pool overlooking the ocean. Victoria had spent countless hours making this place beautiful. Now it felt like visiting a museum of her former life. She knocked on her own front door, which felt surreal. After a moment, Scarlett answered, wearing Victoria's silk robe. "Victoria," Scarlett said, her green eyes widening with what looked like genuine surprise. "I did not expect to see you here. It is still my house until I sign those papers," Victoria replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I wanted to talk to you." Scarlett stepped back, allowing Victoria to enter. The living room looked different already. Scarlett had moved some furniture around, and there were fashion magazines scattered on Victoria's antique coffee table. "Would you like some coffee?" Scarlett asked. "I just made a fresh pot." "Please." Victoria settled carefully into her favorite armchair, the one that had belonged to her grandmother. "Scarlett, I need to understand something. How did this happen between you and Richard?" Scarlett brought 2 mugs from the kitchen, moving with the fluid grace that had made her successful as a model. She curled up on the sofa across from Victoria, tucking her long legs beneath her. "I never meant for it to happen," Scarlett said, her southern accent more pronounced than usual. "Richard was just so lonely, Victoria. He said you barely spoke to him anymore, that you were always busy with decorating projects or charity events." Victoria felt a stab of guilt. Had she neglected her marriage? She had been so focused on creating the perfect home, the perfect life. "He pursued me," Scarlett continued. "I tried to keep things professional, but he was so persistent. He made me feel special, like I was the most important person in his world." "And now?" Victoria asked. "Now I love him." Scarlett's voice was soft but firm. "I know that must hurt you to hear, but it is the truth. Richard and I connect on a level he says he never had with you." Victoria studied Scarlett's face, looking for signs of deception. But the young woman seemed genuinely emotional, even a little guilty. "What about my baby?" Victoria asked. "Does it bother you that Richard is abandoning his own daughter?" Something flickered across Scarlett's expression, too quick to identify. "Richard says the timing is suspicious, that maybe the baby is not his." "You know that is not true," Victoria said firmly. "I have never been unfaithful, not once in 6 years." "I only know what Richard tells me," Scarlett replied. "But Victoria, even if the baby is his, Richard and I deserve a chance at happiness. We cannot help who we love." Victoria felt her blood pressure rising again. "You deserve happiness. What about me? What about my daughter?" "Life is not always fair," Scarlett said, and for a moment her mask slipped. There was something cold in her eyes, something calculating. Then it was gone, replaced by fake sympathy. "I am sorry you are hurt, but Richard made his choice." The front door opened, and Richard walked in carrying coffee and pastries from their favorite cafe in town. He stopped short when he saw Victoria. "What is she doing here?" he asked Scarlett. "She wanted to talk," Scarlett replied, standing to greet Richard with a kiss that was clearly performed for Victoria's benefit. "Well, you have talked," Richard said coldly. "Now leave. Scarlett and I have plans today." "What plan?" Victoria asked, hating herself for caring. "We are flying to Cabo for the weekend," Richard said. "A little celebration of our new life together." Victoria felt like she had been slapped. Richard had always promised to take her to Cabo. He said they would go after the baby was born, make it a family vacation. "While I figure out my living situation?" Victoria asked bitterly. "That is not my problem anymore," Richard replied. "You have until Monday to remove your personal items. After that, I am changing the locks." As Victoria struggled to stand from the armchair, her phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID and felt her stomach drop. "It is my Aunt Margaret," she said. "I should take this." "Victoria, darling," Margaret Monroe's voice crackled through the phone. "I hope you are well. I was calling to ask if you have heard from Sarah recently. Victoria frowned. Sarah was Margaret's daughter, Victoria's cousin. They had been close as children, but had a falling out 10 years ago over their grandfather's will. No, Aunt Margaret, I have not heard from Sarah in years. Why? She has been calling family members lately, Margaret said. She claims she wants to reconnect and make amends. She asked specifically about you, wanted to know about your life, your marriage. I thought it was odd. Victoria glanced at Scarlett, who was listening intently to the phone conversation. Why would a model from Georgia care about Victoria's family drama? What exactly did Sarah want to know? Victoria asked. Everything, Margaret replied. Your address, Richard's business, when the baby is due. She said she wanted to send a gift, but something felt off about it. Sarah never cared about family before. Victoria felt a chill run down her spine. Sarah had disappeared 10 years ago after their grandfather left his entire estate to Victoria instead of dividing it between the cousins. Sarah had accused Victoria of manipulating their grandfather, of stealing what should have been shared. When did these calls start? Victoria asked. About 8 months ago, Margaret said. Right around Christmas. She was very persistent, very charming. But you know Sarah, she always had an agenda. 8 months ago. That was exactly when Scarlett had moved to Malibu, when she had rented the guest house and started working her way into their lives. Aunt Margaret, what does Sarah look like now? Victoria asked, her heart pounding. I have not seen her in person, Margaret replied, but she sent me a photo last month. She looks completely different. Lost weight, dyed her hair dark, even changed her accent somehow. She said she had been living in Georgia, working as a model. Victoria's blood went cold. She stared at Scarlett, who had gone very still. I have to go, Victoria said into the phone. I will call you later. She hung up and looked directly at Scarlett. That is interesting. My cousin Sarah has been asking about me, and she is working as a model in Georgia now. What a coincidence. Scarlett's face remained perfectly composed, but Victoria caught the slight tightening around her eyes. Small world, Scarlett said casually. Georgia has lots of models. Yes, it does, Victoria agreed. But how many of them know that I used to collect antique music boxes? You mentioned that yesterday when we were talking about hobbies. Scarlett blinked. I think you mentioned it before. No, I did not, Victoria said firmly. I never told you about the music boxes, but Sarah knew about them. We used to play with them at our grandfather's house when we were children. Richard looked between the two women, confused. What are you talking about, Victoria? You are not making sense. But Victoria was making perfect sense for the first time in months. She studied Scarlett's face more carefully. The bone structure was familiar, the shape of her eyes, even the way she tilted her head when thinking. Sarah always did have green eyes, Victoria said quietly, and she was always jealous of what I had. Scarlett stood abruptly. I think you should leave now. The pregnancy hormones are making you paranoid. Maybe, Victoria said, struggling to her feet, but I am going to find out for sure. As Victoria walked toward the door, Scarlett called after her. Victoria, wait. Her voice had changed slightly, the southern accent less pronounced. Even if you are right about something, it would not change anything. Richard still loves me. He still wants to be with me. Victoria turned back. If I am right about what, Scarlett? I did not accuse you of anything specific. Scarlett's face flushed, realizing her mistake. I just meant whatever conspiracy theory you are cooking up. But Victoria knew she had hit a nerve. As she walked back to her car, her mind was racing. Could Scarlett really be Sarah? The timing was too perfect to be a coincidence. And that slip about the music boxes was damning evidence. Her phone rang as she started the car. It was Grace. How did it go? Grace asked. I think Scarlett might be my cousin Sarah in disguise, Victoria said. I know it sounds crazy, but the timeline matches perfectly. That does not sound crazy at all, Grace replied. That sounds like revenge. Where are you now? Driving to your house, Victoria said. Grace, if I am right about this, then Sarah has been planning this for months. She researched my life, my marriage, my weaknesses. She seduced Richard as part of some elaborate revenge plot. Then we need proof, Grace said. And we need it fast before they leave for Cabo. As Victoria drove away from her former home, she caught a glimpse of Scarlett watching from the living room window. For just a moment, the mask slipped completely. The expression on Scarlett's face was not one of love or guilt. It was pure hatred. Victoria's hands shook on the steering wheel. Her cousin Sarah had spent 10 years plotting revenge, and she had chosen the cruelest method possible. Destroy Victoria's marriage, abandon her while pregnant, and steal everything she held dear. But Sarah had made one crucial mistake. She had underestimated Victoria's intelligence and her determination to protect her unborn child. The war was just beginning. Back at Grace's house, Victoria paced the living room despite her friend's protests that she should rest. Her mind would not stop racing with the possibility that Scarlett was actually Sarah. "We need a private investigator," Victoria said. "Someone who can dig into Scarlett's background quickly." "I know someone," Grace replied, scrolling through her contacts. "Marcus Webb. He specializes in family law cases. Very discreet." "But Victoria, what if you are wrong? What if Scarlett really is just a model from Georgia who fell for your husband?" Victoria paused her pacing. "Then I am a paranoid pregnant woman having a breakdown. But Grace, you did not see her face when I mentioned the music boxes. She knew something she should not have known." Grace dialed Marcus Webb's number. Within an hour, the private investigator was sitting in Grace's living room, listening to Victoria's story with professional interest. Marcus was in his 50s, gray-haired and soft-spoken, with the kind of face that blended into crowds, perfect for surveillance work. "I can run a basic background check on Scarlett Daniels within 24 hours, Marcus said. "But if she is using false documents, it might take longer to uncover her real identity." "Do whatever you need to do," Victoria said. "Money is not an issue. My grandfather left me well provided for." After Marcus left, Victoria tried to rest but found herself staring at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed with text messages from Richard, each one more demanding than the last. "Sign the papers. Stop being dramatic. Aikunen, Scarlett and I are leaving for Cabo in 2 hours. Handle your business." Grace took the phone away from Victoria. "Block his number. This harassment needs to stop." "I cannot believe this is my life," Victoria said. "Yesterday I was married to a successful businessman, living in a beautiful home, preparing for my first child. Today I am homeless, penniless, and possibly the victim of an elaborate revenge plot by my own cousin." "You are not penniless," Grace reminded her. "Your grandfather's inheritance is separate property. Richard cannot touch that money." Victoria nodded, but the inheritance was a sore subject. Her grandfather, Edmund Monroe, had been a successful businessman who built a small empire of hotels and restaurants. When he died 10 years ago, everyone expected him to divide his estate between Victoria and Sarah equally. Instead, the will left everything to Victoria. Sarah had been furious, accusing Victoria of manipulating their grandfather during his final months. The accusations had torn the family apart, and Sarah had disappeared shortly after the funeral. "What if Sarah is right?" Victoria asked suddenly. "What if I did not deserve the full inheritance?" "Stop that," Grace said firmly. "Your grandfather was mentally sharp until the day he died. He made his choice for reasons only he knew. You cannot second-guess that now." Victoria's phone rang. It was Dr. Crawford. "How are you feeling today?" the doctor asked. "Your blood pressure yesterday was concerning." "Physically, I am fine," Victoria replied. "Emotionally, I am a wreck. Richard took his girlfriend to Cabo while I try to figure out where to live." "I want to see you tomorrow for a checkup," Dr. Crawford said. "And Victoria, I need you to promise me you will avoid stress as much as possible. Your baby's health depends on it." Error. After hanging up, Victoria felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Whatever was happening with Richard and Scarlett, her first priority had to be her daughter's well-being. That evening, Marcus called with preliminary results. "Scarlett Daniels has a very thin paper trail," he said. "She opened a bank account in Los Angeles 8 months ago, got a California driver's license around the same time, and started renting your guest house. But before that, nothing. No employment history, no previous addresses, no social media presence older than 8 months." "That is not normal for a 28-year-old model," Grace said. "Exactly," Marcus agreed. "Most models have extensive online portfolios going back years." Scarlett's modeling career apparently began 8 months ago, which is unusual for someone her age. Most successful models start in their teens. Victoria felt vindicated, but also terrified. So she created a completely new identity just to get close to me. It looks that way, Marcus said. I am digging deeper into her financial records, trying to trace where she got the money to set up this new life. That kind of identity construction is expensive. After Marcus hung up, Victoria and Grace sat in stunned silence. If this is Sarah, then she has been planning this revenge for 10 years, Grace said finally. That level of patience and calculation is frightening. Victoria touched her belly, feeling her daughter move restlessly inside her. She is not just trying to hurt me. She is trying to destroy my child's future too. Her phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Victoria almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Victoria? The voice was familiar but distorted, as if the caller was trying to disguise it. Who is this? Someone who knows the truth about Scarlett Daniels. Meet me tomorrow at noon at the Santa Monica Pier. Come alone. The line went dead before Victoria could respond. Who was that? Grace asked. I think someone wants to help us, Victoria said. But Grace, what if this is a trap? What if Sarah is trying to lure me somewhere dangerous? Then you are not going alone, Grace said firmly. If this meeting happens, I will be there watching from a distance. That night, Victoria dreamed of her childhood with Sarah. They had been inseparable once. Two little girls playing dress-up in their grandmother's attic, sharing secrets and dreams. Sarah had always been more competitive, more ambitious, but Victoria never thought it would lead to this level of betrayal. The next morning, Marcus called again. I found something interesting, he said. Scarlett Daniels received a wire transfer of $50,000 from an offshore account 8 months ago. That money funded her new identity and lifestyle setup. Can you trace the offshore account? Victoria asked. Working on it, but these things take time. However, I did find one more piece of the puzzle. Scarlett has been making regular payments to a plastic surgery clinic in Beverly Hills. Not for procedures, but for consultations and recovery support services. Victoria's heart pounded. She had plastic surgery to change her appearance. It looks that way. The payments started about a year ago, which suggests she was planning this transformation well in advance. As Victoria prepared for the mysterious meeting at Santa Monica Pier, she felt a strange mix of fear and determination. If Sarah thought she could destroy Victoria's life and walk away unscathed, she was about to learn otherwise. The pregnant woman who had cried in the doctor's office yesterday was gone. In her place was someone harder, someone willing to fight for her child's future. Victoria might be 8 months pregnant and temporarily homeless, but she was not helpless. Sarah had made the mistake of underestimating her cousin's strength. At 11:30, Victoria and Grace drove toward Santa Monica. Grace would position herself nearby while Victoria met the mysterious caller. They had agreed on hand signals and emergency procedures. Are you sure about this? Grace asked as they parked. No, Victoria admitted, but I need answers. My daughter deserves to know the truth about her father's betrayal. As Victoria walked toward the pier, she felt her baby kick strongly, as if sensing the importance of this moment. Whatever happened next would determine the course of their lives together. The ocean stretched endlessly before them, full of possibilities and dangers. Just like Victoria's future. She was ready to face whatever truth awaited her. The Santa Monica Pier was crowded with tourists and street performers despite the cool December weather. Victoria walked slowly along the boardwalk, her 8-month belly making quick movement impossible. Grace was positioned at a nearby cafe, pretending to read while keeping Victoria in sight. At exactly noon, a woman approached Victoria near the Ferris wheel. She was middle-aged, well-dressed, with short blonde hair and nervous eyes. Victoria Sterling? The woman asked quietly. Yes. Who are you? My name is Linda Chen. I work at the Beverly Hills Plastic Surgery Clinic, where your friend Scarlett has been a client. Linda glanced around nervously. I could lose my job for this, but I cannot stay silent anymore. Victoria's pulse quickened. What do you know about Scarlett? Linda pulled out her phone and showed Victoria a before and after photo. This is what she looked like when she first came to us 18 months ago. Victoria stared at the image and felt the world tilt around her. The before photo showed Sarah Monroe, her cousin, looking exactly as Victoria remembered her from 10 years ago. Blonde hair, rounder face, smaller nose. The after photo showed Scarlett Daniels. She had extensive work done, Linda continued. Nose job, cheek implants, lip fillers, even changed her eye color with permanent contacts. She paid cash for everything, nearly $100,000 in procedures. Why are you telling me this? Victoria asked, her voice barely a whisper. Because she asked me to do one more thing, Linda said. She wanted me to provide her with a drug that would cause pregnancy complications. She said she needed it for a woman who was stealing her boyfriend. I refused, but I am worried she found another way to get what she wanted. Victoria felt sick. Sarah was not just trying to steal Richard. She was trying to harm Victoria's baby. Do you have proof of her real identity? Victoria asked. Linda nodded and handed Victoria a flash drive. Her medical records, payment receipts, everything. Her real name is Sarah Elizabeth Monroe. She listed you as her emergency contact, which I thought was odd since she claimed to hate you. Victoria took the flash drive with trembling hands. Thank you for coming forward. You may have saved my daughter's life. After Linda left, Victoria walked quickly back to Grace's car, her mind racing with the implications of what she had learned. Sarah has been planning this for almost 2 years, Victoria said as they drove back to Grace's house. The plastic surgery, the new identity, even research into pregnancy complications. This is not just about revenge anymore. This is attempted murder. Grace pulled over to the side of the road, visibly shaken. We need to call the police immediately. With what evidence? Victoria asked. Sarah is using a false identity, but she has not technically committed any crimes yet. Seducing my husband is not illegal, and we have no proof she actually tried to harm my pregnancy. What about identity fraud? She could claim Scarlett Daniels is a stage name. Models do that all the time. Victoria stared at the flash drive in her hands. We need more evidence. We need to catch her in the act of something clearly criminal. When they arrived at Grace's house, Victoria called Marcus Webb and arranged to meet immediately. Within an hour, the private investigator was reviewing Linda Chen's evidence. This is good, Marcus said, but your friend is right about the legal limitations. However, I can use this information to dig deeper into Sarah's activities over the past 2 years. What do you need from me? Victoria asked. Access to your house tonight, Marcus said. If Sarah is living there, she might have left evidence of her real plans. People plotting revenge often keep souvenirs or journals. Victoria felt a chill. You want me to break into my own house? It is still legally your residence until you sign those divorce papers, Grace pointed out. You have every right to be there. That evening, while Richard and Sarah were supposedly in Cabo, Victoria used her key to enter the Malibu mansion she had called home for 6 years. Marcus had given her a list of things to look for. Documents, photos, computers, anything that might reveal Sarah's true intentions. The house felt different at night, shadows stretching across familiar rooms. Victoria moved carefully through the space she had once loved, now feeling like an intruder in her own home. In the guest house where Sarah had been living, Victoria found a treasure trove of evidence. Sarah had been careless, perhaps overconfident that her plan was working perfectly. Hidden in a jewelry box was Sarah's real driver's license, credit cards, and a passport under her true name. But more damning was a leather journal filled with detailed notes about Victoria's life. Victoria sat on Sarah's bed and read her cousin's handwriting by flashlight. Day 47. Richard complained about Victoria's charity work again. He feels neglected. This is my opening. Day 63. Convinced Richard to let me move into guest house permanently. Victoria still trusts me completely. She has no idea. Day 89. Richard is falling for me faster than expected. Victoria's pregnancy is making her emotional and clingy. Perfect timing. Day 156. Richard is ready to leave her. Phase 1 complete, now to destroy her completely. The entries grew darker and more detailed. Sarah had documented Victoria's daily routines, her friends' schedules, even her medical appointments. She knew about Victoria's previous miscarriages and had researched ways to cause pregnancy complications. Most chilling was the final entry. Phase 2 begins after Cabo. Richard will be completely under my control. Victoria will be broken, bankrupt, and alone. The inheritance that should have been mine will finally be justice. Grandfather always loved her more, But she will learn that pretty princesses do not always get happy endings. Victoria photographed every page with her phone, her hands shaking with anger and fear. This was not just revenge. This was systematic psychological warfare. In Sarah's computer bag, Victoria found even more evidence. Sarah had been in contact with several of Richard's business competitors, offering inside information about his deals. She had also researched Victoria's trust fund, looking for ways to access or freeze the inheritance money. But the most disturbing discovery was a folder labeled Emergency Plans. Sarah had prepared multiple backup strategies in case her seduction of Richard failed. These included framing Victoria for adultery, causing a car accident, and even burning down the house with Victoria inside. Victoria felt nauseated. Her cousin was not just vengeful, she was genuinely dangerous. As Victoria prepared to leave with the evidence, she heard a car pulling into the driveway. Richard and Sarah were supposed to be in Cabo until tomorrow. Had their plans changed? Victoria quickly gathered the most important documents and slipped out the back door of the guest house. She hid behind the pool house as Richard's Mercedes pulled up to the main house. Through the windows, Victoria could see Richard and Sarah arguing. Sarah was gesturing wildly, clearly upset about something. Richard looked angry and frustrated. Victoria crept closer, trying to hear their conversation. "You lied to me," Richard was saying. "James told me you have been talking to my competitors, sharing confidential information about my deals." "I was trying to help," Sarah replied, but her southern accent was slipping. "I thought we could make more money by playing both sides." "That is industrial espionage, Scarlett. You could have destroyed my company." Sarah laughed, and the sound was nothing like the sweet southern belle she had pretended to be. "Your company is already failing, Richard. I just wanted to make sure we got something out of it before it collapsed completely." "We?" Richard stepped back from her. "Who are you really? Because the woman I fell in love with would never talk like this." Sarah's mask finally slipped completely. "I am someone who is tired of pretending to love a weak, pathetic man who abandons his pregnant wife for a younger woman." "You disgust me, Richard. But you were useful." Victoria watched as Richard's face changed, realization dawning. "You used me. This whole thing was a setup." "Of course it was," Sarah said coldly. "Did you really think a woman like me could love a man like you? You are just a stepping stone in a much larger plan." Richard stared at her in shock. "What plan? What are you talking about?" Sarah smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression Victoria had ever seen. "Destroying Victoria Sterling and taking back what was stolen from me 10 years ago. You were just the weapon I needed to break her." Victoria had heard enough. She slipped away from the house and drove quickly back to Grace's place, her mind reeling with everything she had discovered. Sarah was not just seeking revenge. She was completely unstable, dangerous, and willing to hurt anyone who got in her way, including Victoria's unborn daughter. The war was no longer about a cheating husband or a divorce settlement. It was about survival. Victoria spent the rest of the night organizing the evidence she had gathered. By morning, she had a complete dossier on Sarah's deception. Medical records proving her plastic surgery, financial records showing her offshore funding, and most damning of all, her own journal documenting the entire revenge plot. Grace reviewed everything over coffee, her expression growing darker with each revelation. "This is enough to have her arrested," Grace said. "Identity fraud, industrial espionage, conspiracy. We need to call the police immediately." "Not yet," Victoria replied. "If we call the police now, Sarah will disappear again. She has been planning this for 2 years. I guarantee she has exit strategies prepared." "Then what do you want to do?" Victoria touched her belly, feeling her daughter's strong kicks. "I want to confront her publicly, in front of everyone who matters. I want Richard to see exactly who he threw away his family for." That afternoon, Victoria learned that Richard and Sarah were attending the annual Malibu Children's Charity Gala that evening. It was an event Victoria had helped organize for 3 years running. She knew everyone who would be there: Richard's business associates, their social circle, influential people in the community. "You cannot be serious about going to that gala," Grace said. "You are 8 months pregnant, and Sarah is clearly unstable. What if she becomes violent?" "Then she will do it in front of 200 witnesses," Victoria replied. "Grace, I have been thinking about this all morning. Sarah's plan only works if I stay hidden, if I let shame and embarrassment keep me silent. But what if I refuse to be the victim she expects? Victoria spent the afternoon preparing carefully. She chose a stunning black maternity gown that emphasized her pregnancy rather than hiding it. She had her hair and makeup done professionally. She wanted to look powerful, not pitiful. At 7 that evening, Victoria walked into the Beverly Hills Hotel ballroom where the charity gala was taking place. Conversation stopped as people noticed her. Word of Richard's affair and divorce demands had spread through their social circle. Victoria held her head high and walked directly to Richard and Sarah's table. They were sitting with James Mitchell and several other business associates, laughing about something. Sarah looked beautiful in a red evening gown, playing the perfect girlfriend role. "Good evening, everyone," Victoria said pleasantly. "Richard, Scarlett, I hope you enjoyed Cabo." Richard looked mortified to see her there. "Victoria, what are you doing here? This is not appropriate." "I think it is very appropriate," Victoria replied. "After all, this is a charity I helped establish. These are people I have known for years. Why would I not be here?" Sarah was studying Victoria carefully, trying to determine her agenda. "You look lovely," she said with false sweetness. "Pregnancy suits you." "Thank you, Sarah," Victoria said deliberately. Sarah's face went completely still. Around the table, people looked confused by the name change. "I am sorry," James Mitchell said. "I thought your name was Scarlett." "It is," Sarah said quickly, but her southern accent wavered. Victoria smiled. "Actually, her real name is Sarah Elizabeth Monroe. She is my cousin. We have not seen each other in 10 years, not since she disappeared after our grandfather's funeral." The table went silent. Richard was staring at Sarah with growing horror. "That is ridiculous," Sarah said, trying to maintain her composure. "I have never seen this woman before in my life." Victoria pulled out her phone and showed the table the before and after photos Linda Chen had provided. "This is Sarah Monroe before her plastic surgery 18 months ago, and this is her after $100,000 worth of procedures to change her appearance." The photos passed around the table as Sarah's face flushed red with anger. "You are having some kind of breakdown," Sarah said desperately. "The pregnancy hormones are making you paranoid." "Am I?" Victoria asked. She pulled out Sarah's journal and began reading aloud. "Day 156. Richard is ready to leave her. Phase 1 complete. Now to destroy her completely." Richard grabbed the journal and read several pages, his face growing paler with each entry. Around them, other guests were beginning to notice the commotion. "This cannot be real," Richard said. "You wrote this yourself to frame her." Victoria showed him Sarah's real identification documents. These were hidden in her jewelry box, along with detailed plans to destroy your business, steal my inheritance, and cause complications with my pregnancy. The evidence was overwhelming, but Sarah was not finished fighting. "Even if some of that is true," she said, standing up from the table, "it does not change the fact that Richard loves me more than he ever loved you. He chose me, Victoria. He threw you away like garbage." The words hit their target, and Victoria felt tears threatening. But she had come too far to break down now. "You are right," Victoria said quietly. "Richard did choose you, but he chose a lie. He fell in love with a character you created, not the real you. And now that he knows the truth, what do you think he will choose?" All eyes turned to Richard. He looked devastated, humiliated, and angry. But instead of apologizing to Victoria, he turned his anger on her. "This is your fault," he said bitterly. "If you had been a better wife, none of this would have happened. Sarah only succeeded because you gave her an opening." Victoria stared at her husband in disbelief. Even faced with proof of an elaborate deception, he was still blaming her. "You are right, Richard," Victoria said finally. "I was not a perfect wife. I focused too much on making our house beautiful and not enough on making you feel valued. But I never lied to you. I never manipulated you. I never tried to destroy your life for revenge." Sarah had been silent during this exchange, but now she laughed coldly. "This is beautiful," she said, her fake accent completely gone now. "Even when he knows the truth, Richard still chooses to blame you instead of taking responsibility for his own weakness. You picked a real winner, cousin." The ballroom had gone quiet around them. 200 people were watching the drama unfold. Victoria felt a sharp pain in her abdomen and gasped. The stress was taking its toll on her body. I need to sit down, she said, reaching for a chair. Is the baby coming? Grace appeared at Victoria's side, having been watching from across the room. I do not know, Victoria said. The pain is getting worse. As Grace helped Victoria to a chair, Sarah made her final play. You want to know the truth? Sarah called out loudly, addressing the entire ballroom. Victoria Sterling manipulated our grandfather into leaving her his entire fortune. She stole my inheritance, destroyed my family, and ruined my life. Everything I did was justice. The crowd murmured with shock and confusion. Victoria doubled over as another contraction hit. Grace, I think the baby is coming. Someone call an ambulance, Grace shouted. As paramedics arrived and helped Victoria onto a stretcher, she caught sight of Sarah's face one last time. Her cousin was smiling with satisfaction, believing she had won. But Victoria knew something Sarah did not. The real battle was just beginning. In the ambulance on the way to the hospital, Victoria gripped Grace's hand tightly. Promise me something, she whispered between contractions. If something happens to me, do not let Sarah win. Protect my daughter. Nothing is going to happen to you, Grace said firmly. You are going to be fine, and you are going to raise your daughter yourself. Victoria hoped Grace was right, because her little girl was coming into the world surrounded by lies, betrayal, and danger. But she was also coming into a world where her mother had finally learned to fight back. The contractions turned out to be false labor brought on by stress, but Dr. Crawford insisted on keeping Victoria in the hospital overnight for observation. As she lay in the sterile room, connected to monitors tracking her baby's heartbeat, Victoria felt a strange sense of clarity. She had spent months trying to save her marriage, trying to understand what she had done wrong. Now she realized the problem was never her. Richard was weak, easily manipulated, and selfish. Sarah was mentally unstable, dangerous, and consumed by a 10-year-old grudge. But Victoria was stronger than either of them had anticipated. At 9 in the morning, Sarah appeared in Victoria's hospital room doorway. She looked different without the scarlet persona. Her hair was pulled back severely, her makeup minimal, her clothes expensive but conservative. She looked like the old Sarah, but with a hardness that had not been there 10 years ago. May I come in? Sarah asked politely. Victoria was tempted to refuse, but curiosity won out. Why are you here? Sarah entered and closed the door behind her. To finish our conversation from last night, before you had your little medical emergency. There is nothing left to discuss, Victoria said. I know who you are and what you have been doing. The police will be involved soon. Sarah smiled and pulled a chair close to Victoria's bed. Actually, there is quite a lot to discuss. For instance, did you know that Richard has been embezzling money from his company for the past 2 years? Victoria felt a chill. What are you talking about? Your husband has been stealing from client accounts to fund your lavish lifestyle, Sarah continued conversationally. The Malibu mansion, the cars, the jewelry, the vacations, all paid for with other people's money. That is impossible, Victoria said, but doubt was creeping in. Richard had been secretive about finances lately, claiming business was complicated. Sarah pulled out a tablet and showed Victoria bank statements, transfer records, and accounting documents. I have been documenting everything for months. Richard thought he was so clever, but he left a paper trail a child could follow. Victoria stared at the evidence in horror. Millions of dollars had been moved from client accounts into personal accounts, then spent on their lifestyle. Why are you showing me this? Victoria asked. Because I want to make you a deal, Sarah said. Help me destroy Richard completely, and I will split the profits with you when we sell off his assets. Victoria could not believe what she was hearing. You want me to help you commit fraud? I want you to help me get justice, Sarah corrected. Richard stole millions of dollars. He abandoned his pregnant wife for another woman. He deserves to lose everything. And what do you get out of this? Sarah's mask slipped, revealing the rage underneath. I get to watch you suffer the way I suffered when you stole my inheritance. Except this time, you will lose everything while I profit from your pain. Victoria understood now. This was never about Richard. He was just a weapon Sarah had used to hurt Victoria. The real target had always been Victoria herself. You are insane, Victoria said quietly. No, Sarah replied. I am focused. I have spent 10 years planning my revenge, and I am not going to let false labor and a few tears derail it now. Before Victoria could respond, there was a knock on the hospital room door. James Mitchell entered, looking haggard and worried. "Victoria, I need to talk to you," he said urgently. Then he noticed Sarah. "What is she doing here?" "James, perfect timing," Sarah said with a smile. "I was just telling Victoria about Richard's creative accounting practices." James went pale. "Victoria, I tried to warn Richard months ago that his books did not add up. I thought he was just disorganized, but when I dug deeper—" "You found the embezzlement," Victoria finished. James nodded miserably. "I confronted him about it yesterday after the gala. He broke down and admitted everything. Victoria, he has been stealing from client accounts for 2 years. The FBI is already investigating." Victoria felt the walls closing in around her. "Am I implicated?" "As his wife, you could be charged as an accessory if prosecutors think you knew about the money," James said. "All those purchases, the house renovations, the expensive vacations. It looks like you were benefiting from the stolen funds." Sarah was watching this conversation with obvious satisfaction. "It gets worse," she said cheerfully. "Richard has been using your trust fund as collateral for some of his riskier investments. If his company goes down, your inheritance goes with it." Victoria felt like she was drowning. Everything she thought she knew about her life was a lie. Her husband was a criminal. Her home was bought with stolen money. Her financial security was at risk. "There is more," James said reluctantly. "Richard has been talking to federal investigators. He is trying to make a deal, claiming he was manipulated into the embezzlement by someone else." "Let me guess," Victoria said bitterly. "He is blaming me." "Actually, he is blaming her," James said, nodding toward Sarah. "He claims Scarlett convinced him to take the money, that she was the mastermind behind everything." Sarah laughed. "That is rich. Richard cannot even take responsibility for his own crimes." Victoria studied her cousin's face carefully. "But you did encourage him, did you not? You researched his financial problems and pushed him toward more desperate measures." "I may have made some suggestions," Sarah admitted, "but Richard made his own choices. I just helped him see his options more clearly." There was another knock on the door, and Dr. Crawford entered with a concerned expression. "Victoria, your blood pressure is elevated again. I need everyone to leave so you can rest." As James prepared to go, he turned back to Victoria. "There is something else you should know. Richard is missing. He never came home last night after the gala, and his phone is turned off. The FBI wants to question him, but they cannot find him." After James left, Dr. Crawford tried to get Sarah to leave as well, but Sarah refused. "I am family," she said sweetly. "Surely I can stay with my cousin during her difficult time." Once they were alone again, Sarah's demeanor changed completely. "Richard is probably halfway to Costa Rica by now," she said. "He had escape plans prepared just in case. Swiss bank accounts, false passports, the works. Your loving husband is about to disappear forever, leaving you to face the criminal charges alone." Victoria closed her eyes, trying to process everything. Her husband was a thief and a coward. Her home was bought with stolen money. Her inheritance was at risk. And her cousin was enjoying every moment of her pain. "Why?" Victoria asked quietly. "Why did our grandfather's will hurt you so much that you would do all this?" Sarah's expression softened slightly, showing a glimpse of the cousin Victoria had once loved. "Because I loved him too," Sarah said. "Grandfather Edmund was the only person who ever believed in me. When he died and left me nothing, it felt like he was saying I was worthless, that you were worth everything and I was worth nothing." "He loved you too," Victoria said. "I know he did." "Then why did he leave you everything?" Sarah asked, and for a moment she sounded like the hurt little girl Victoria remembered. "I do not know," Victoria admitted. "I never understood it either. But Sarah, destroying my life will not bring him back or change what happened." Sarah's vulnerability disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. "Maybe not, but it makes me feel better." She stood up and walked toward the door, then paused. "Oh, Victoria, you might want to have your prenatal vitamins tested. I have been replacing some of them with look-alike pills that could cause pregnancy complications. Consider it my insurance policy." Victoria felt ice-cold terror wash over her. "You have been poisoning me?" "Just enough to ensure things do not go too smoothly." Sarah said casually. I wanted you weak and vulnerable when the real revelations came out. As Sarah left the hospital room, Victoria frantically called for Dr. Crawford. If Sarah had been tampering with her prenatal care, Victoria's baby could be in serious danger. The tests would take hours to complete, but one thing was already clear. Sarah Monroe was not just seeking revenge, she was trying to commit murder. Dr. Crawford's blood tests confirmed Victoria's worst fears. Someone had been systematically replacing her prenatal vitamins with pills containing herbs known to cause pregnancy complications. The levels were not high enough to be immediately fatal, but over time they could have caused premature labor, birth defects, or miscarriage. We need to call the police immediately, Dr. Crawford said as she reviewed the lab results. This is attempted murder of both you and your unborn child. Victoria nodded, but before she could respond, her hospital room door burst open. 3 FBI agents entered, led by a stern-faced woman in her 40s. Mrs. Sterling, I am Agent Patricia Wong, the lead agent said, showing her badge. We need to ask you some questions about your husband's business activities. I already know about the embezzlement, Victoria said wearily, and I know Richard has disappeared. Agent Wong raised an eyebrow. Actually, we found your husband this morning. He is in federal custody, and he is very eager to make a deal. Victoria felt a mix of relief and dread. Relief that Richard had not successfully fled the country. Dread about what deal he might be trying to make. What kind of deal? Victoria asked. He claims the embezzlement scheme was orchestrated by someone else, Agent Wong replied. Someone who manipulated him into stealing the money as part of a larger revenge plot against you. Victoria almost laughed at the irony. Richard was finally telling the truth, but only to save himself from the consequences of his own actions. Let me guess, Victoria said. He is blaming Scarlett Daniels, who is actually my cousin, Sarah Monroe. The 3 agents exchanged glances. Agent Wong pulled out a tablet and showed Victoria a photo. Is this the woman you know as Scarlett Daniels? Victoria nodded. That is her now, but her real name is Sarah Monroe, and she has had extensive plastic surgery to change her appearance. We know, Agent Wong said. We have been tracking Sarah Monroe for 18 months. She is wanted for fraud in 3 states, identity theft, and now attempted murder. Victoria stared at the agent in shock. You have been tracking her? Then why did you not arrest her before she could hurt me? We needed to build a comprehensive case, Agent Wong explained. Sarah Monroe is part of a larger criminal network that specializes in revenge-for-hire schemes. Wealthy people pay them to destroy their enemies through elaborate long-term cons. The revelation hit Victoria like a physical blow. Someone paid Sarah to do this to me? We believe so, Agent Wong said. The offshore account that funded her transformation and new identity can be traced to a shell company. We are still working to identify the actual client. Victoria's mind raced through possibilities. Who hated her enough to pay for this level of destruction? She had lived a relatively quiet life, focused on charity work and her marriage. She could not think of anyone who would want to hurt her this badly. What about my inheritance? Victoria asked. Sarah claims Richard used my trust fund as collateral for his investments. Agent Wong consulted her notes. That appears to be true. Your husband had significant gambling debts and business losses that he was hiding from you. He used your trust fund to secure loans, then stole from client accounts to make payments. Victoria closed her eyes, trying to process the full scope of her financial ruin. How much is left? We are still calculating the total losses, but it appears most of your inheritance is gone, Agent Wong said gently. Your husband was in much deeper financial trouble than anyone realized. There was a knock on the hospital room door, and Grace entered with Marcus Webb, the private investigator. Victoria, we have been trying to reach you all morning, Grace said. Marcus found something important about Sarah's background. Agent Wong nodded to Marcus. Mr. Webb has been sharing his research with our investigation. Please tell Mrs. Sterling what you discovered. Marcus pulled out a thick folder. Sarah Monroe has been planning this revenge for much longer than we thought. She started researching your life 5 years ago. Not 2 years ago. 5 years, Victoria repeated in disbelief. She has been patient and methodical, Marcus continued. She studied your marriage, your social circle, your financial situation. She even took classes to change her accent and learn about modeling. This was a professional operation. Agent Wong added, "We believe Sarah was hired by the client 3 years ago and given a significant budget to plan and execute your destruction. The level of detail and preparation suggests someone with serious money and a serious grudge." Victoria felt overwhelmed by the scope of the conspiracy against her. Who could hate me that much? I have never hurt anyone intentionally. That is what we intend to find out, Agent Wong said. But first, we need your cooperation to arrest Sarah Monroe before she disappears again. What do you need me to do? Victoria asked. She has been trying to contact you since yesterday, Agent Wong explained. We think she wants to gloat about her success or possibly make another deal. If you agree to meet with her while wearing a wire, we can get a confession that will put her away for decades. Grace immediately protested. Absolutely not. Victoria is 8 months pregnant, and Sarah has already tried to poison her. I will not let her walk into a trap. We will have agents positioned everywhere, Agent Wong assured her. Mrs. Sterling will be completely protected. Victoria thought about her unborn daughter, about the life she wanted to give her, a life free from the shadows of this revenge plot. I will do it, Victoria said finally, but I want to know who hired her. I want to know who really destroyed my life. Agent Wong nodded. That is our goal too. Sarah Monroe is just an employee. We want the person who paid for your destruction. As the FBI agents left to make arrangements, Victoria felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in months, she was not facing this crisis alone. The full power of the federal government was now focused on protecting her and bringing her enemies to justice. But she also felt a deep sadness for the life she was losing, the beautiful house she had loved, the financial security she had counted on, the marriage she had tried to save. All of it was built on lies and stolen money. Her daughter would be born into a very different world than Victoria had planned. But maybe that was not entirely a bad thing. This new world would be built on truth instead of illusions. And Victoria was learning that she was much stronger than she had ever imagined. The reckoning was coming, and she was ready for it. The FBI set up the meeting with Sarah for the following afternoon at a neutral location, the lobby of the Beverly Hills Hotel. Victoria would wear a wire and try to get Sarah to confess to the poisoning and reveal who had hired her. As Victoria prepared for what could be the most dangerous conversation of her life, Dr. Crawford insisted on one final ultrasound to check the baby's health after the vitamin poisoning. Everything looks normal, Dr. Crawford said as she moved the ultrasound wand across Victoria's belly. Your daughter is strong and healthy, despite what that woman tried to do to her. Victoria stared at the monitor, watching her baby's heart beat steadily. I am going to call her Hope, she said suddenly, because she is the only good thing to come out of all this darkness. Hope is a beautiful name, Dr. Crawford agreed, and she is going to have a very brave mother. At 2 in the afternoon, Victoria walked into the Beverly Hills Hotel lobby, wearing a wire hidden under her maternity dress. FBI agents were positioned throughout the hotel, disguised as guests and staff members. Grace sat at a nearby table, pretending to work on her laptop while actually monitoring Victoria's safety. Sarah was waiting in a secluded corner of the lobby, looking polished and confident. She had returned to her scarlet persona, complete with the southern accent and charming smile. Victoria, darling, Sarah said as Victoria approached. You look wonderful for someone whose world has completely fallen apart. Victoria sat down carefully, her pregnancy making quick movements difficult. I wanted to thank you, she said. Sarah looked surprised. Thank me? For what? For showing me who Richard really was, Victoria replied. If you had not seduced him, I might have spent years married to a man who could betray me so easily. Sarah's smile faltered slightly. This was not the conversation she had expected. You are taking this better than I hoped, Sarah said cautiously. I have had time to think, Victoria said, about our grandfather, about the inheritance, about what really happened 10 years ago. And what conclusion did you reach? Sarah asked. Victoria leaned forward conspiratorially. I think you were right. I think I did manipulate Grandfather Edmund into changing his will. Sarah sat up straighter, interested despite herself. What do you mean? I spent more time with him during his final months, Victoria continued. I listened to his stories. I helped him with his medications. I made him feel important. I knew he was considering how to divide his estate, and I made sure he saw me as the responsible granddaughter while you were off pursuing your modeling career. I knew it, Sarah said, her fake accent slipping. I knew you manipulated him. The question is, what do we do about it now? Victoria asked. The inheritance is mostly gone thanks to Richard's embezzlement, but there are still some assets left. Maybe it is time to make things right between us. Sarah studied Victoria's face carefully, trying to determine if this was genuine or another trap. What are you proposing? Sarah asked. A partnership, Victoria said. You obviously have skills I do not. You planned and executed a flawless revenge operation. I have connections and resources you could use. Why should we be enemies when we could be allies? Sarah laughed, but it sounded uncertain. You want to partner with the woman who destroyed your marriage and tried to kill your baby? You want justice for something that happened 10 years ago, Victoria replied. I want security for my daughter's future. Maybe we can help each other. The conversation was going exactly as Agent Wong had hoped. Sarah was becoming more comfortable, more willing to talk about her crimes. It was not just about justice, Sarah admitted. I was paid to destroy you. Very well paid. Victoria felt her heart rate spike, but she kept her voice calm. Paid by whom? Someone with very deep pockets and a very old grudge, Sarah said mysteriously. Someone who has been watching you for years, waiting for the right moment to strike. Why the secrecy? Victoria asked. If we are going to be partners, I need to know who we are dealing with. Sarah hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. Margaret Hamilton, your husband's first wife. Victoria felt the world tilt around her. Richard's first wife had died in a car accident 5 years ago. At least that is what Richard had told her. Margaret is alive? Victoria whispered. Very much alive, Sarah confirmed. And very angry that Richard married you 6 months after faking her death in that car accident. The revelation was so shocking that Victoria almost forgot she was wearing a wire. Richard had not been a widower when she married him. He had been a bigamist. The car accident was staged? Victoria asked. Margaret discovered Richard was embezzling money from his first company, Sarah explained. She threatened to expose him unless he cleaned up his act. Instead, he decided it would be easier to make her disappear. Victoria felt sick. He tried to kill her? He sabotaged her car, yes, but Margaret survived the crash and decided to let the world think she was dead while she planned her revenge. Sarah was enjoying this revelation. She has been watching you for 5 years, Victoria, watching you live in the house she decorated, spend the money she earned, play the perfect wife to her husband. And she hired you to destroy me instead of just exposing Richard herself? Margaret wanted you to suffer the way she suffered, Sarah said. Losing everything, being betrayed by the person you trusted most, facing financial ruin and public humiliation. She wanted you to experience every pain she had endured. Victoria understood now. This was never about Sarah's jealousy over the inheritance. Sarah had been hired to carry out an elaborate revenge plot by a woman who had every right to hate both Victoria and Richard. Where is Margaret now? Victoria asked. Sarah checked her phone. Probably watching the news coverage of Richard's arrest. She has been waiting years for this moment. And what about the poisoning? The pregnancy complications you tried to cause? Sarah shrugged casually. Margaret said she did not care if your baby survived or not. She just wanted you broken beyond repair. Victoria felt rage building inside her, but she forced herself to stay calm. The FBI was recording everything. Sarah was confessing to attempted murder for hire. What happens now? Victoria asked. Margaret got her revenge. Richard is arrested. I am financially ruined. My reputation is destroyed. Is she satisfied? Not quite, Sarah said with a cruel smile. There is one more phase to the plan. Margaret wants to meet you face to face. She wants to see your face when you realize that your entire marriage was built on a lie, that your husband is not just a cheater, but a would-be murderer. When? Victoria asked. Tonight, Sarah replied, at your house in Malibu. She is already there waiting for you. She wants to have dinner in the dining room you decorated, using the china you picked out, celebrating the complete destruction of your life. Victoria realized this was the moment Agent Wong had been waiting for. Sarah had revealed the location where Margaret could be arrested. I should go home and prepare for this dinner, Victoria said, standing slowly. Yes, you should, Sarah agreed. And Victoria? Margaret asked me to give you a message. She says thank you for taking such good care of her husband. She is looking forward to having him back. As Victoria walked away from the table, she heard Sarah laugh softly behind her. But the laugh sounded forced, uncertain. Maybe Sarah was finally beginning to realize that her perfect revenge plot was about to unravel. In the hotel parking garage, Agent Wong was waiting with a full tactical team. "Excellent work," Agent Wong said as she removed Victoria's wire. "We have enough evidence to arrest Sarah Monroe and search for Margaret Hamilton. This operation is almost over." Victoria touched her belly, feeling hope kick strongly. "Will Margaret really want Richard back after everything he has done?" Victoria asked. "Probably not," Agent Wong replied, "but some people become so consumed with revenge that they lose sight of their original goals. Margaret Hamilton has spent 5 years planning this destruction. She may not know how to stop." As the FBI team prepared for the raid on Victoria's former home, she felt a strange mixture of anticipation and sadness. Tonight would bring answers, justice, and closure. But it would also mark the final end of the life she had thought she was living. Tomorrow she would wake up as a single mother with no home, no money, and no illusions left. But she would also wake up free from lies, free from manipulation, and ready to build a new life based on truth. For her daughter's sake, that would have to be enough. The FBI raid on Victoria's Malibu mansion was scheduled for 8 that evening. Victoria insisted on being there, despite Agent Wong's concerns about her safety. "I need to face Margaret Hamilton myself," Victoria said as they drove toward Malibu. "This woman destroyed my life because of something my husband did to her. I need to understand why she blamed me instead of him." Grace sat beside Victoria in the FBI vehicle, holding her hand tightly. "You do not owe that woman anything. She tried to kill your baby." "I know," Victoria replied, "but I need to look her in the eye and ask her why. Why did she think I deserved to suffer for Richard's crimes?" The mansion looked exactly the same from the outside, but Victoria knew everything had changed. This was no longer her home. It was a crime scene, the setting for the final act of a revenge plot that had consumed 3 years of multiple lives. Through the surveillance equipment, the FBI could see 2 figures moving around inside the house. Sarah was in the kitchen, apparently preparing dinner as promised. Margaret Hamilton was in the living room, examining the interior design choices Victoria had made over 6 years of marriage. Agent Wong positioned her team around the property, while Victoria waited in an armored vehicle nearby. The plan was simple. Sarah and Margaret would be arrested simultaneously to prevent either one from escaping or destroying evidence. At exactly 8 o'clock, the FBI moved in. Victoria watched on the surveillance monitors as agents entered through multiple entrances. Sarah was taken into custody in the kitchen without resistance. She seemed almost relieved that the game was finally over. Margaret Hamilton was in the living room, and when the agents identified themselves, she did something unexpected. She asked to speak with Victoria before being arrested. "Let me talk to her," Victoria said to Agent Wong. "She cannot hurt me with all these agents around." Agent Wong reluctantly agreed, but insisted that Victoria wear a bulletproof vest and that 2 agents accompany her into the house. Victoria walked through her former front door for what she knew would be the last time. The living room looked exactly as she had left it, except for one addition. A formal dining table had been set for 3 people, using Victoria's best china and crystal. Margaret Hamilton stood beside the fireplace, and Victoria was shocked by her appearance. She looked nothing like the photos Victoria had seen of Richard's dead wife. Margaret appeared to be in her early 50s, with silver gray hair and elegant clothes. She could have been any wealthy Malibu socialite. "Victoria," Margaret said calmly, "thank you for agreeing to see me. I know this must be overwhelming." "You tried to kill my baby," Victoria said without preamble. "Why?" Margaret's composed expression flickered slightly. "That was Sarah's idea, not mine. I only wanted to destroy your marriage and your financial security. I never intended for your child to be harmed." "But you did not stop it when you learned what Sarah was doing." "No," Margaret admitted. "I did not. By that point, I was so consumed with hatred that I stopped thinking clearly about collateral damage." Victoria studied this woman who had orchestrated the destruction of her life. "Why did you blame me? I had nothing to do with what Richard did to you." Margaret's careful composure began to crack. "Because you were living the life that was stolen from me. You were sleeping in my bed, using my china, entertaining guests in the house I decorated. You were playing the perfect wife to a man who tried to murder me." "I did not know," Victoria said quietly. "Richard told me you died in a car accident. I had no idea he was still married when we got together. I know that now, Margaret said, her voice breaking. But for 5 years I watched you from a distance, and all I could see was the woman who had replaced me. I convinced myself that you must have known that you were complicit in Richard's crimes. Victoria felt an unexpected surge of sympathy for this woman. You could have exposed him at any time. Why wait 5 years to act? Margaret walked to the dining room table and touched one of the crystal glasses Victoria had chosen for their anniversary 3 years ago. Because I wanted him to lose everything the way I lost everything, Margaret said. If I had simply exposed him 5 years ago, he would have faced some criminal charges, but he would have kept his freedom, his reputation, his ability to start over. I wanted him to experience complete destruction. So you hired Sarah to seduce him? I hired Sarah to destroy your marriage and his business simultaneously, Margaret corrected. The seduction was just one part of a larger plan. Sarah was supposed to manipulate Richard into making increasingly desperate financial decisions while documenting everything for the FBI. Victoria realized the full scope of what had happened. You wanted him to go to prison for embezzlement. I wanted him to lose his freedom, his money, his reputation, and the woman he loved, Margaret said. I wanted him to sit in a prison cell, knowing that his own weakness and greed had cost him everything that mattered. And me? What was I supposed to lose in all this? Margaret's face hardened again. I wanted you to experience what I experienced. The shock of discovering that your husband was not who you thought he was. The humiliation of learning that everyone knew your marriage was a lie. The financial devastation of losing everything you had built together. Victoria touched her belly, feeling hope move restlessly inside her. What about my daughter? What did she ever do to deserve growing up without a father or financial security? For the first time, Margaret looked genuinely ashamed. I told myself that children are resilient, that she would be better off without Richard as a father. But the truth is, I was so focused on revenge that I stopped caring about innocent victims. Agent Wong appeared in the doorway, indicating that they needed to wrap up the conversation. Margaret would be arrested and charged with conspiracy, fraud, and attempted murder. I have one more question, Victoria said. Are you satisfied now? Did destroying my life make you feel better about what Richard did to you? Margaret looked around the living room she had watched Victoria decorate through surveillance photos over the years. No, she said quietly. It did not. I thought revenge would heal the wound Richard left when he tried to kill me. Instead, it just created more wounds. I destroyed an innocent woman's life and endangered an unborn child. The person I became during these 5 years is someone I do not recognize. As FBI agents moved to arrest Margaret, she turned back to Victoria one final time. I know this does not change anything, but I am genuinely sorry for what I put you through. You did not deserve to pay for Richard's crimes. Your daughter did not deserve to lose her father and her inheritance because of my need for vengeance. Victoria watched as Margaret was led away in handcuffs. She felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger at the years of manipulation and lies, but also pity for a woman who had let hatred consume her life. Grace appeared at Victoria's side. How do you feel? Empty, Victoria admitted. For months I thought I was losing my mind, that I was imagining problems in my marriage. Now I know that every instinct I had was correct, but it does not feel like vindication. It just feels sad. Agent Wong joined them in the living room. We found extensive documentation in Margaret's hotel room, financial records, surveillance reports, psychological profiles of you and Richard. She has been obsessed with this revenge plot for years. What happens now? Victoria asked. Margaret Hamilton will face federal charges for conspiracy, fraud, and attempted murder. Sarah Monroe will be charged as her accomplice, plus additional charges for the vitamin poisoning. Richard will likely plead guilty to embezzlement in exchange for a reduced sentence. Victoria looked around the living room one last time. What about the house? The assets purchased with stolen money. Most of it will be seized by the government and sold to compensate Richard's victims, Agent Wong explained. You may be able to recover some personal items, but the house, cars, and luxury goods will be gone. As they prepared to leave the mansion, Victoria asked Agent Wong one final question. The inheritance money that Richard used as collateral. Is there any way to recover it? Agent Wong consulted her notes. Some of it may be recoverable through the legal process, but it will take years and you will likely only get back a fraction of what was lost. I am sorry, Victoria. Your husband's crimes have left you in a very difficult financial position. Victoria nodded, accepting the reality she had been dreading. She would be raising Hope as a single mother with very limited resources. But as they drove away from the Malibu mansion, Victoria felt something she had not experienced in months. Peace. The lies were finally over. The manipulation had ended. The people who had tried to destroy her were facing justice. "Where will you go now?" Grace asked as they headed back toward town. "I do not know yet," Victoria admitted, "but I know who I am now, and I know what I am capable of. That is more than I knew this morning." Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Crawford. "How did everything go? Hope and I are both thinking of you." Victoria smiled as she typed back, "We are both fine. Better than fine. We are free." Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Finding a place to live, figuring out how to support herself and Hope, rebuilding her life from nothing. But tonight, for the first time in months, Victoria Sterling was exactly where she belonged, in control of her own destiny, with her daughter safe inside her, and the truth finally revealed. The nightmare was over. The real life could begin. 1 year later, Victoria sat in Dr. Crawford's office for Hope's 12-month checkup. Her daughter was healthy, happy, and showed no effects from Sarah's attempt to poison her before birth. Hope had her mother's blonde hair and her father's blue eyes, but her personality was entirely her own, determined, curious, and fearless. "She is perfect," Dr. Crawford said, as Hope babbled and reached for the stethoscope. "And how are you doing, Victoria? You look wonderful." Victoria did look different than she had a year ago. The expensive clothes and perfect salon styling were gone, replaced by practical outfits and hair she styled herself. But there was something in her expression that had not been there before: confidence, peace, and genuine happiness. "I am doing well," Victoria said, lifting Hope from the examination table. "Better than I ever expected." The past year had been the hardest of Victoria's life, but also the most rewarding. With her inheritance mostly gone and no support from Richard, Victoria had been forced to rebuild her life from scratch. She had started by moving into a small apartment in Santa Monica with Hope, using the last of her available funds to cover rent and basic necessities. The apartment was tiny compared to the Malibu mansion, but it was theirs, and it was honest. Finding work had been challenging. Victoria's background in interior design was solid, but she had no recent professional experience and no business contacts outside of Richard's social circle. Most of those people had distanced themselves after the scandal, but Grace had helped Victoria remember skills she had forgotten she possessed. Before marrying Richard, Victoria had been creative, resourceful, and independent. Those qualities were still there, buried under years of trying to be the perfect wealthy wife. Victoria had started small, offering design consultations to friends and neighbors. Word spread quickly about her eye for style and her ability to create beautiful spaces on limited budgets. Within 6 months, she had enough clients to support herself and Hope, modestly but comfortably. "I have something to tell you," Victoria said to Dr. Crawford as she packed up Hope's diaper bag. "I am buying a house." Dr. Crawford looked surprised. "That is wonderful news. How did you manage that so quickly?" Victoria smiled. "It turns out Margaret Hamilton left instructions in her will for me to receive a significant sum of money. She died in prison 3 months ago, and apparently her conscience finally caught up with her." Margaret's unexpected bequest had been the final twist in a story full of surprises. The woman who had orchestrated Victoria's destruction had ultimately tried to make amends, leaving Victoria enough money to buy a modest house and establish a college fund for Hope. "She also left me a letter," Victoria continued, apologizing again and explaining that she had been watching my recovery over the past year. She said she was impressed by how I had rebuilt my life and wanted to help secure Hope's future. Victoria had struggled with whether to accept Margaret's money. Taking it felt like profiting from the woman's mental illness and obsession. But ultimately, Victoria had decided that Margaret's final act of conscience could benefit Hope, and that was what mattered most. The new house was in Manhattan Beach, small but charming, with a yard where Hope could play and a home office where Victoria could meet with interior design clients. It was nothing like the Malibu mansion, but it was everything Victoria actually needed. As they left Dr. Crawford's office, Victoria's phone rang. It was Grace calling with news about the ongoing legal proceedings. Richard's sentencing hearing is next week, Grace said. The prosecutor thinks he will get 7 to 10 years for the embezzlement. Victoria felt a familiar pang of sadness. Despite everything Richard had done, he was still Hope's father. Victoria had decided she would take Hope to visit him in prison when she was old enough to understand, but only if Hope wanted that relationship. What about Sarah? Victoria asked. She pleaded guilty to all charges and got 15 years. She is apparently getting psychological treatment in prison. Her lawyer says she has expressed genuine remorse for what she did to you and Hope. Victoria was glad to hear that Sarah was getting help. The cousin she had once loved was clearly mentally ill, consumed by a decade-old grudge that had poisoned her entire life. Maybe prison would give Sarah the opportunity to heal and find peace. I have other news, Grace continued. James Mitchell wants to meet with you about a business opportunity. Victoria was intrigued. James had been Richard's business partner, but he had also been the one to expose Richard's crimes to the FBI. He had lost his own company when Richard's embezzlement came to light, but he had started over with a new venture. That afternoon, Victoria met James at a coffee shop in Santa Monica. Hope sat in her stroller, charming everyone nearby with her bright smile and babbling conversation. I want to offer you a partnership, James said without preamble. I am starting a new company that combines real estate development with interior design services. High-end residential projects, but with an emphasis on sustainable, family-friendly spaces. Victoria was surprised by the proposal. Why me? I am hardly established in the interior design world. Because you understand what really matters in a home, James replied. I watched you create beautiful spaces in that Malibu mansion, but more importantly, I have seen how you created a real home in your small apartment. You know the difference between luxury and comfort, between showing off and building a life. The offer was tempting, but Victoria had learned to be cautious about business partnerships. I would need equal partnership and complete creative control over the design aspects, she said. James nodded. I expected nothing less. Victoria, I failed to protect you from Richard's crimes, even though I suspected something was wrong. I would like the chance to make that right by helping you build something substantial for yourself and Hope. Victoria looked at her daughter, who was reaching for a colorful flower arrangement on the cafe table. Hope's future was the most important consideration in any decision Victoria made. Let me think about it, Victoria said. I will give you an answer by Friday. As they parted ways, Victoria felt a familiar sense of possibility. The Victoria who had signed divorce papers in a doctor's office a year ago would never have considered starting a business. But the Victoria who had survived betrayal, financial ruin, and attempted murder was capable of anything. That evening, Victoria sat on the floor of her small apartment, playing with Hope and thinking about the choices ahead of her. The partnership with James could provide financial security and professional growth. The new house would give them stability and room to grow. Margaret's bequest had given them options Victoria never expected to have again. But the most important change was inside Victoria herself. She was no longer the woman who had spent 6 years trying to be perfect for a man who was lying to her. She was no longer afraid of making mistakes or taking risks. She was a mother, a businesswoman, and a survivor. She was exactly who she was supposed to be. Hope crawled over and pulled herself up on Victoria's knee, looking up at her mother with bright, trusting eyes. What do you think, little one? Victoria asked. Should we take a chance on building something new? Hope babbled happily and clapped her hands, which Victoria chose to interpret as enthusiastic approval. Victoria picked up her phone and called James. I accept your partnership offer, she said when he answered. When do we start? How about Monday morning, James replied, and Victoria could hear the smile in his voice. Welcome back to the business world, partner. After hanging up, Victoria walked to the window of her small apartment and looked out at the Pacific Ocean in the distance. It was the same ocean she had seen from her Malibu mansion, but the view felt completely different now. A year ago, she had been living a beautiful lie. Tonight, she was living a modest but honest truth. Hope fell asleep in Victoria's arms as the sun set over Santa Monica Bay. Victoria held her daughter close and whispered a promise. We are going to build something real this time, Hope. Something that belongs to us. Something no one can take away. something based on truth instead of lies. The future stretched ahead of them, full of challenges and possibilities. Victoria was ready for both. She had learned the hard way that the strongest foundations are built not on money or status, but on honesty, resilience, and love. And those were riches that could never be stolen, no matter how elaborate the revenge plot against them. As Hope slept peacefully in her arms, Victoria Sterling smiled. Tomorrow would bring new adventures, new challenges, and new opportunities to build the life she and her daughter deserved. A life based on truth, built with her own hands and filled with genuine happiness. The millionaire's wife was gone forever. In her place was something much more valuable, a woman who knew her own worth, independent of anyone else's opinion. Victoria Sterling was finally free. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, imagine what's coming next. Hit that like button if you're ready for more mind-bending tales of deception and revenge. Drop a comment below with your wildest theory about what you would do in Victoria's situation. I love reading your thoughts. And don't forget to share this with someone who needs a good plot twist in their day. Subscribe and ring that notification bell because trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when the perfect victim decides to fight back. The real story is just beginning.